Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Hello, we're going to give everyone a couple minutes to join us and connect to audio and all those good things before we get started today.
Let us know in the chat where you're zooming in from. We'd love to start the conversation in the chat.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah.
Hawaii, Oklahoma. Welcome
Go
everyone.
Anadarko.
Yeah, yeah. I immediately thought of you when I read that down.
That's home.
Hi, Donna.
Hey, Linda.
Awesome. Please, you can, this is like a talking circle. So if you want to come off of mute, you can just stay off of mute. We're really going to be having a conversation during this talking circle. And so you can go ahead and come off of mute. We've got a bunch of people. Should we get started, Casey?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to start off with two business type things, our disclaimer, and also I'm going to go ahead and let everyone know that this is being recorded. So just a heads up that we are recording this and we will post it if you want to share it with other people on your team as well. And for our standard disclaimer, this presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. I'd like to welcome your OIE program officers, Dr. Donna Sabis-Burns and Donna Bussell.
Thank you so much, guys, for showing up today. We have some great things to discuss and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donna. And as you may have figured out already, myself and Olani are tag teaming this one. So we will be your discussion facilitators today. Hello, Olani.
Hey, hi, Casey. Hi, everybody.
All right, so I will go over our agenda for today before we dive in. So the welcome, of course, and then Olani is going to dig into our new talking circle format and share a little bit about that with you. And then both of us will join in on facilitating the discussion, and then we'll close out with sharing resources and reminders.
Awesome. Let's
All
get
right.
rolling.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Casey. So we got some really great feedback from you folks, as well as from your program officers. And so what we're doing this year is just tweaking technical assistance just a little bit to hopefully match your needs more. We are providing sort of a layered approach, not a sort of, but a layered approach to technical assistance. And so you can see where we have on the bottom of this pyramid, what we consider like universal technical assistance, a technical assistance that's open to everyone, and where we provide really some broad information regarding your grant, as well as getting conversations going on between your fellow grantees. And then we have a more targeted where we have heard from you around what your needs are as it relates to technical assistance, as well as also what your program officers are seeing out there. And then we will be providing more targeted around topics and maybe concerns or supports that are needed. And then at the top of the pyramid, we have a more intensive. And these are really when we might have like one-on-one, whether it's coaching sessions or some small group sessions, maybe working on a particular topic or concern. And also, maybe your program officer has identified a topic that is a really a high need. And so this will allow us to provide more targeted and intensive technical assistance. Next slide, please, Casey. So as you can see, I'm sure starting out, when you had the first slide, you saw that we are actually combining talking circles. That's one of the new things with talking circles this year. And so we really want to create more of a community of practice. And so we brought together the NAL ED as well as the NAL RC, the Native American Language Resource Center grantees together, because we thought we would have some really supportive and impactful conversations going on between the resource centers, as well as the programs that are on the ground, working within NAL. And so we're hoping that this new talking circle format will create more integrated conversations between the two grant programs, and that the discussions will be around a specific topic rather than like in the past training sessions. Sometimes in the past, we would use talking circles to provide you like how to do your APR. We're now sort of moving that into another area and really wanting talking circles to be more about you folks talking together. That doesn't mean that in talking circles, we won't be talking about APR, but probably most of that will be more like workshop and you folks sort of sharing and learning from each other as it relates to the APR. A lot less of us going through, all the different parts of the APR. We're going to find another place to provide that information to you. Also, we thought we wanted to have a smaller portion of time for to provide essential updates. And so again, we'll continue to give you reminders, maybe some due dates, maybe some key things that your program officers want you to be mindful of. So we'll still do that in Talking Circle, but again, we want to really have it to be a lot more of you talking and a lot less of us talking. And so here are the upcoming the schedule for the talking circles. Again, right now, NAL at ED and NALRC we're combining this talking circle. And I really believe that that's going to provide some really fruitful discussions and maybe some offline discussions and working together as well. Next slide, please. So since you folks are just getting to like maybe know each other, we wanted to show you a map of where you all are. And so those orange dots are the NAL at ED grantees and where they're at. And then the black dots are the NAL resource centers. And so you see one is located in Hawaii. That is actually the National Resource Center. And then if you see the other black dots on the United States, those are your regional centers. And so that's sort of where everybody is at. A great sort of sense of maybe some connections, maybe where your regional is, and if you are actually located in that region, and you can connect to your regional center. We're going to go ahead and put the annotations on, and we would love for you folks to go ahead and you can write on the screen in your annotation. If you go down to, let's see, on the bottom, sort of, if you're looking at your screen, the left-hand corner, you'll see like a little green pencil or a pencil there. You can click on that and that'll allow you to annotate on this screen. And you can go ahead and let us know, sorry, what languages you are working to maybe preserve, maintain, and or get to a place where you're renormalizing your native language in your community. So go ahead and if you're unable, maybe you are on your cell phone or something, you can go ahead and share that in the chat as well. Oh, great. I see Leslie putting in, oh, thanks for that what is that? Explanation of the NALRC. Thank you. But we'd love to see all the languages you folks are working. Again, if you can't get into the annotation, go ahead and put it in the chat. Or you can come off of mute and share as well. Oh, I see Leslie putting all down the list. We have Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole. Awesome. All right. Okay, people still writing. Too many to list. Great. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Again, the regional and the national cover a lot of space. And so that's why they have probably too many languages to list. But thanks again for showing your region and what states make up your region. Okay, now I really want to encourage everybody, because this is a talking circle and we're doing a lot less talking. I really want to encourage you to come off of mute and we're going to start the discussion. Our first question we wanted to really pose to you folks and get you folks to start to discuss is, how are Native students experiencing growth in equity in education as it relates to Native American languages? And we have some maybe other sub thoughts you might want to open up and share about. And we're really, again, focusing around Native American languages in all the different ways in which you folks are delivering Native languages or providing more access to Native languages. And I'll be quiet. Please, again, come off mute. We'd love to hear you.
Well, when it comes to equity, I think it's my understanding that, you can't always achieve equality, but you can make adjustments to provide more equitable circumstances. So I think there's quite a bit of research out there. I'm sorry, I'm a little late joining again.
Okay.
I think there's quite a bit of research out there that kind of talks or discusses the correlation between a student's well-being and ability to thrive in their environment, educational setting, and feeling represented. And that's actually like across all platforms, from media portrayals to, pop culture to our education. So whenever you don't see yourself represented and you don't have your language being present, your identity being represented, it almost kind of feels like it is a form of erasure and, invisibility. And so that, in that sense, having that space carved out through the growth of our language, the fact that our language is what is the medium that keeps our culture alive, those two things kind of provide a more equitable environment for our students who maybe in other spaces don't get that the affirmation of their identity, as Native people, or specifically Kiowa students in our situation. Funding resources. Well, the funding and resources make that possible. I mean, I know Kiowa people are always going to do what they need to do to make sure that we're reaching our people. But, in today's, contemporary capitalistic society, like money makes the world go round, and creation of materials and lesson plan templates and jobs, that requires resources and funding and getting the word out there and trying to spread awareness of what we as a program are trying to do, which is revitalize an endangered language, and with that empower our upcoming generation. You know, that's just, so I think that all of those things, like our language growing, our cultural connections, and our funding and resources, like help provide a more equitable environment for our students.
Mhm. Yeah, that's awesome. Other people have similar thoughts and maybe some different thoughts? Thank you for sharing.
Olani, can I share my screen?
Yes, please. Let's see. Let me go ahead and see if I can't make you co-host.
Or you could just say multiple screens,
Yeah.
multiple.
Okay, doke. You should be able to share.
Okay. So I want to tell you guys that the biggest push that's been new from the language teachers this year has been, and it started last year, that you can't take language out of the culture and you can't take culture out of the language.
Right.
So I know Chelsea was saying something about cultural identity. This is a piece of our school improvement plan. We have a 5-year strategic plan, and we make a 1-year school improvement plan from it each year. And this is the part that's on Dakota. And there's a couple objectives. First, working with the students, and then secondly, working with the staff on their language usage. But in the activities, and even in the strategy, it says Dakota we choka. And that's like the Dakota way of life. So it's really that the language is embedded in, and what they're saying is at school, we need to make sure that school is a place that really supports that Dakota way of life. And that we need to support all of our kids reclaiming their cultural identity through our cultural activities. And, you know, we're doing a lot of Dakota language family nest activities, and we do a lot of school-wide Dakota language together, Dakota Yapi. And then trying to do, we have a lot of project-based cultural activities that we do, and the language is embedded within them. And then we're still talking about having some effective strategies for language learning, because we're not sure we have that perfected yet. And we want to extend it. And that's why we do the monthly language nest activities to our students' home. And then again, helping students reclaim their cultural identity and facilitating immersive conversations. So that's how we're trying to do it. You know, we're 100% native school, so it's pretty equitable for all of our students. We're not in a public school system, so we only have tribal members or lineal descendants of tribal members at our school. But we also, I think the biggest thing that maybe makes us different from most other schools is that we're not just doing language in the language classroom. You go to Dakota and that's the only way you learn Dakota, or not just in immersion classroom and Dakota language classroom. We ask our teachers, and I have a document in our Google Drive where the teachers told me what all phrases that they're using in Dakota regularly. The latest thing I've been doing, we're required, all the teachers, and I still teach a middle school math 8th grade class. So we're required to make sure that our objective is posted of what we're doing. And I actually have my kids write it into their interactive math notebook, but this is how I write it. And I write it on the board and they copy it in. Petu kinde, this day. And then it's like functions that are linear or non-linear. Iwo hadakapi. Yeah. Today we're going to talk about how to determine whether functions are linear or non-linear. And I every day I write it with Dakota immersed in it every day. And when they ask the date, I'm like, Ampetukende, 12/5/24, and I write it on the board. And so and we're just trying to expand it more and more. So I'm proud we have a lot of non-native teachers, and I'm proud of them for how much Dakota language that they use. So in every core content, in every class that we teach. So we're just keep trying to do all of those things. And I think that's what keeps us on the right track. We call Dakota a core curriculum. We're not just teaching math and English and science and social studies. We have 5 cores at our school, and Dakota is one of them because we don't have enough people left to carry it on if the schools don't make a dent. We really are going to lose our language. But that's what I have to share.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Anyone else? Please feel free to share anything if you want to come on screen and share something that you're working on that connects to the discussion point. Please go ahead, and even if it doesn't.
I don't want to talk too much or dominate the conversation or anything and not let anyone else talk. But one thing that she reminded me of when she was talking was, a lot of our schools that we're working with, and even schools that we don't have teachers placed in, they have been requesting like materials, so signage, posters, things like that to put up in their school. So maybe, tone, the word for water above the water fountain, and the word signage for the bathrooms, and,
Right.
Tali and Matan for boy and girl, and, just kind of incorporating that. And that, I think, in those spaces where we still have a large Kiowa presence, the student demographic is largely comprised of Kiowa students, but still it's, mainstream public school system that provides them a bit of a more equitable environment. And then she said something about that being a core class.
Right.
We're not there, and that's really cool. And there's always talks of, someday having an immersion school. But in the interim, until we can get there, I think one thing, and I'm just throwing this out here, and I've mentioned it before, was like the concept of curriculum mapping. So if you have a Kiowa language class and you do the cultural component, and maybe one of the stories or one of the books or assigned readings maybe is about like the Rainy Mountain School, which is one of the schools where boarding schools. Well, then you can get with your history teacher, Oklahoma history teacher. Well, what are you going to teach? Are you going to teach this book? How can I incorporate Kiowa language? How can we kind of work together? Maybe you go talk to your world lit teacher. What are you focusing on during Native American Heritage Month? How can we work together and align our lesson plans in a way that when they go into the other classrooms, they don't have to switch from thinking in Kiowa. They don't all of a sudden have to like shift gears, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I had that moment of like being seen and feeling like I can be me in this class, but now in this one it's like, back to. So I think curriculum mapping would be really, really useful for some of us who, we're still trying to work towards that being more immersive.
That's great. I think that's a great idea to bring, like you said, history, and then see how you're going to integrate language into that.
It's a me and Chelsea show today, Olani. Could I show you guys one other thing? Sorry, you guys.
Of course.
I want to show you guys something else. So she was talking about print materials, and I'm telling you guys, I found this in French. And we have a graphic designer down at the Dakota Language Institute, and I said, could you redraw this and let's put it all in Dakota. This is a required poster for every classroom. We have 2 of them. One is called Dakota Wo'ope, Dakota Rules or Law. And we used to have the slant, sit up, whatever all that was.
Mhm.
And now we have Dakota Wo'ope, where it says Ahituwa, so look towards, and we say Inina because we want kids to be quiet when they're instructing. So we have a poster for that. That's required, and we require this one. So this is how you ask to go to the bathroom. This is how you ask to open the door. Tiopa yuha. You know, the middle one is going to the bathroom. Takad bida wachi owaki he. It used to be outside. That was from a long time ago speech when you had to go outside. Takad
Yeah.
is outside. You're going to go outside to the bathroom, and we still kept it. So,
Nice.
and Yawa is to read, Iutaka is to sit down, Inaji is to stand up. So we require every classroom to have this poster, and we print them for them and buy them for them and do all that. But the Dakota Language Institute has elders that come once a week on Tuesdays, and I used to have them do our translations. We had a second language teacher, but now we're so strong with this grant is really helpful because it funds 2 people, 2 Dakota language teachers, and they're strong. So now we can do our own translations right here at school, and we don't have to rely on the elders, but they go to see the elders for mentoring so that they support their second language learning too. But yeah, so I just wanted to show you, I found this in French and I said, please remake this in Dakota for me. And I found a bunch of stuff, and we just create all the materials pretty much ourselves. And then we share them, whatever we have, we give away. That's how we think about it.
Awesome. That's fabulous. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to talk on this or share something as it relates to, growth and providing more equity in education for native languages?
Alani, I did want to draw attention to Nadine's response in the chat. I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool about how non-native teachers are being trained for immersion school classes and to be able to do some of these things. And so she said we offered Dakota language classes for credit on campus right after school 1 semester, and then we get out by 1:15 on Friday. It's a staff meeting until 1:30 in Dakota language every Friday. So I thought that was really cool. It might be helpful for others. And then if anyone else had any thoughts on like how you're training teachers, I feel like that's pertinent to this question as well.
Very much so. Again, we want to encourage you. This is a no mute zone, so you can come off of mute and stay off of mute. Because we want to have a conversation.
Well, Olani, I'm gonna have to say bye
Oh,
to all my people here and to my Kaibo folks, my Anadarko folks. Kionde da. Oh,
thanks,
love you
Donna.
guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Alrighty. Well,
Also to follow up on what Alani was saying too, y'all feel free to ask your own questions as well. I know, Donna Sabas Burns had put a question in the chat for Nadine earlier, so feel free to come off mute and ask questions if things are coming up for you as well.
I can kind of share how we're training our teachers, although we don't really train many teachers who aren't Kiowa. I think we have maybe 1 who has been accredited or credentialed through our credentialing board, but kind of leaving out, because it's a long backstory, there have been efforts ever since, assimilation efforts to eradicate our language, to keep our language alive. So, that would be tracing a lot of history. But as it stands, we have a language program, and there's a curriculum that was created under a previous grant, the Kiowa Language Culture and Revitalization Program. And this curriculum, it's over the years, it's become more and more refined. There was a steering committee comprised of, intelligent Kiowa people dedicated to their culture and their language. And we have a level 1 and a level 2 curriculum booklet. And what we do is we recruit 5 teachers at a time minimum. We're hoping to grow, become more sustainable and expand our reach. That was always the goal, was to have at least 5 locations from which we would recruit or have candidates apply. Then from there, they begin going to weekly classes at least. And they get both a little bit of classroom management and
Yeah.
professional development, as well as the language learning. And so it's just kind of a continual effort to improve what the foundation that's already there. You know, there's a lot in a lot of tribes, there's a lot of turnover there, you know, things like that. And so everybody's dedicated, everybody's committed, is just kind of keep getting that cohesion. And I think we're finally sort of getting there. And so they begin in around August. I've kind of updated some of the requirements. So they're expected to study, you know, an hour a day at least. Then attend weekly sessions and with our elder mentors. Then they also communicate with our credentialed teachers who already have been through the program. We support them along the way, you know, have checkpoints, talk with them weekly. I mean, one of my staff has a Facebook group with them. We have a community teacher who meets with them on Wednesdays, Sundays. We have a department teacher who meets with them on Thursdays. Another one of our department teachers who works for the high school meets with them on Mondays. And we just try to hold them accountable, you know, reach out to them. They log their time in a Google form, upload their lesson plans. So they have to create 10 lesson plans at least, conduct a few outreaches. I kind of view it as a sort of practicum to demonstrate that they, you know, what they've learned so far. So they get the opportunity through partnering with other departments in the tribe or community stakeholders to lead a lesson and sort of, and then that gives us an opportunity to conduct surveys, you know, just put a face to people and be in our community. And that's kind of just the gist of it. It's a 10-month training program. There are 2 components. One is the professional development side, etiquette, how do, you know, what's the correct way to interact with elders? How do you make a lesson plan? You know, things like that. And then the other side is just learning how to speak. And they go through a credentialing test at the end. Because see, Oklahoma has world language standards and a world language department, but they don't have a subject area test for a lot of endangered languages. So through, you know, it was a huge accomplishment, a huge endeavor to take on to establish what is now known as our Kiowa Language Credentialing Board. And so for anyone to teach, they have to, in the public school system, properly, you know, on an actual teaching certificate, they have to go through our training program. So yeah, it's pretty neat. So it kind of served in lieu of the lack of having an OSAT, Oklahoma subject area test. You know, there may be a subject area test for, say, Mandarin or, you know, French, but not really Kiowa. So, you know, the people who were in this program before me and leading it before me, you know, they took that on and they made that happen. And so it's really up a lot of opportunity. Yeah. The hard part is really like conveying to everyone who's interested in teaching, or Kiowa specifically, you know, the importance of of what it is, because you always run into, you know, trying to explain, well, you know, it sounds cliche, the whole thing, walking in 2 worlds, you know, you got to be careful. Oh, well, it's in lieu of the subject area test. Well, what do we need a subject area test for? This isn't, you know, that's not Kiowa. We didn't have a subject area test, you know. So it's always kind of balancing that. But I mean, it's important, because without the guidance of these more experienced teachers and these elders who take the time to walk us and guide us through the credentialing process, we're not going to be speaking true Kiowa, you know. So, but the teachers, when they finish their 10-month training, they have an interview. That's the first stage. Then they're tested over kinship terms, because it's a really integral part of our culture. They're tested over the grammar in our language is incredibly difficult. So they're tested over pronouns. We have a lot of pronouns. I can't even try plural, dual pronoun. Anyway, it's really beyond me. I'm the director. I'm not the language expert, you know. And then there's one more component. So like conversational, kinship, grammar, and pronunciation, I believe, possibly. And so once they complete those 4 stages of credentialing, they should have created what is equivalent to like a portfolio, you know. So like I don't know how other states do it, but Oklahoma, they got rid of the you had to take the OGET, the general education test, the subject area test, and then like a final comprehensive test, and they replaced that with a portfolio. So you build your portfolio, and that kind of aligns with what we do already, you know.
Right.
So our teachers build a portfolio. There isn't like a test at the end, like how are you going to apply, your pedagogy. We do that. We cover that. They have to
Right.
write, but it's just a little bit different order. And we tried to make it more culturally relevant. So once they get through those 10 months, they've submitted their lesson plans, they've done all their trainings, they've engaged in outreaches. They've kind of built their own like materials really throughout the way. Then they test, and hopefully by then we put them in the classrooms, and
Yeah.
that's the next challenge is, finding classrooms. Well, we have about 12 teachers at least that are credentialed, but we need the schools in their areas to start offering Kiowa, or find some people who are willing to relocate. And we've had a couple, that have been willing to relocate to teach Kiowa, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you. That's some amazing sharing on your teacher training program.
That's great. I was just curious, do any of the NALRC centers have any good resources that focus on training non-native teachers for immersion schools? I just think I never thought of it as a resource, but something I'm very interested to hear about. Do you guys have anything that you know of right off the bat? And thank you, Nadine and Chelsea. That was so helpful. Maybe not.
Was there?
But
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey, Leslie.
hey,
I was banking
friends.
on you, Leslie. Yay.
Hey. That's a really interesting question.
I know. I hadn't really thought of it. Sorry about my dog.
Well, my life has been spent in language medium education and policy and training and development and creation. So I guess it's how you frame up your question, right, Donna? Donna Sabis Burns.
Yes.
What is out there for teaching non-native teachers? Like, yeah, I live on a
it's a whole
reservation.
program,
We're
right?
living in a world where there are very few native teachers in the
Right.
beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There are still very, very few
Mhm.
native teachers.
That's right.
It's almost all people who
Mhm.
drive in, teach here for 5 years till their student
Mhm.
loans are forgiven, and then move
Yeah.
along, and then you get a new crop of teachers.
Right.
So there's a whole systems thing to consider about teaching non-natives. But I'm Ojibwe. I'm speaking from my own perspective. I do not speak for 500 plus languages around the world, but nor do I even speak for all Ojibwe people in the lakes and rivers region. But in our community at Leech Lake, where I am from, everyone is excited to hear everyone speak Ojibwe. So the focus is on like, yeah, anybody and everybody can learn. Now that's not necessarily so. There are some languages where it is long held tribal policy, tribal rules, tribal laws that nobody outside of the tribe can hear or learn or speak their language, right? But where
Right.
I'm at, we're like, Ojibwe used to be the lingua franca of the entire country. We ran the economy for a long time during the fur trade era. Everybody came in and learned to speak Ojibwe and Odawa to work with us and to negotiate with us and to trade with us. So, you know, we've always been like, hey, party on, let's everybody learn the language. So, I mean, there's no taboo on non-natives learning the language. It's you got to talk about longevity, you got to talk about dosage, you got to talk about expectations. So you need a base of expectations and like an understanding around language acquisition in your community. You need to come up with shared terminology and identify your methodology. And just like Nadine was saying, you know, like it's built into professional development. I mean, that's what you have to do. So also I'm a public policy person. I work that into Native education and Native language medium education. So for me, yeah, everything does become policy. Is it a policy of the tribe? Is it a policy of the school? What is the policy in the community? And that again, it's shared. It's commonly understood, commonly known. So you've got to, you know, and it's really, all of these issues are really locally dependent. What happens in one place isn't necessarily relevant to another place. Even amongst our Ojibwe communities, my context here in my local area can be much different than another Ojibwe tribe an hour and a half away from me. They have completely different geography. They may have completely different relationships in their community. They may have different animals living in their area. They've got different plants living in their area. They may have different relationships with surrounding communities and governments. They may have different priorities amongst our people. Again, there are multiple Ojibwe tribes in Minnesota. There are some who, you know, would say, for instance, we don't want a pipeline running through our backyard, keep it out. And there are others who have said, we'll take it. So, I mean, like, even within like close cousin relative nations, there are great differences. There are huge differences. So that alone is like, you know, you got to look at locally dependent contexts and characteristics. You've got to come up with ways of identifying that. But yeah, when Nadine was talking about all the trainings and the standards and the expectations and the ways that they're delivering that, I was like, yes, that is all policy based and that you have a good base to grow from. So, you know, there's so much about creating relationships. I gave you guys a throwaway comment at the beginning of my rambling here. That's very real. In our community, we have non-native teachers who are not from here who hang out for 5 years and leave because their student loans get forgiven after 5 years of teaching at a low-income school or at a Bureau of Indian Education school, which is the 8 school districts around my reservation that serve large populations of Native students. So, is it possible to train non-natives to become highly proficient in a language in a short period of time? Maybe you want to build relationships. Maybe there are other ways of looking at how do we keep these non-natives in the community if they're really that committed, but also how are we doing on our relationships with our own people? Are we making these efforts accessible and equitable for our own people in the community? There's big differences there too. The psychological distance, with the safety around language learning, with, you know, all of these ideas, affect towards language learning. Our people are traumatized.
Yep.
There are still places where our own people will say, this is too hard. Why do these non-native people have such an easy time learning our language? So we have to get through that with our own people in our own communities. So it's like this huge systemic piece. So resources on teaching is, yeah, resources on that, you know, of course. You look at language acquisition kind of theory and ideas, and you start looking at just general world language ideas around that. And, you know, we can, you know, find information. People have been giving talks that at conferences I've been at this year that have talked about, you know, how many thousands of hours of instruction you need to reach different, you know, a high level of proficiency in a language. What does it look like if you have, you know, 25 hours of language instruction? What does it look like if you have 100 hours of language instruction in a year for your, you know, professional development team? If you have 1 hour a week for people, that's, you know, typically 50 hours of instruction. Well, then you set your expectations. What can we get people to with 50 hours of instruction if we have an hour weekly?
Right.
Okay, well, then on top of that, is there supplementary expectation? You know, so that increases the dosage of learning. And you can match that up with ACTFL levels. You can match that up there. You know, there's some different models, but ACTFL is pretty easy to understand. And then you build it into your professional development, just like Nadine is saying. And
I like what
then, yeah,
I like what you said about that the writer of the grant that I'm currently overseeing and implementing used actual. And then like you said about, you know, just people being exploitative, coming to your community and, you know, they want to get their debt off and then pay it off and then leave. And then they have this experience of, oh, I lived around, you know, some native people for a while and I did this and that, you know, and
mhm,
it's hard. It's I think with teaching, I don't know, you know, where I'm from, the school, the high school that I went to and where our teacher is, one of our teachers, non-native people learn Kiowa for ages, you know, even with all the efforts at, you know, eradication of our ways. So that's kind of not super uncommon to have, you know, white people or non-native people in general, like kind of learning a little bit of Kiowa here and there. We've seen an improvement in that it's being used less as slang, which was kind of in itself a problem, you know, paduration of our language, you know, and being kind of used that way, but and it being taken, you know, seriously and
yeah,
respected. Um, so for me, I think the best thing we can do sometimes, and hey, Daniel Harbour is an Australian guy residing in England, and he's one of our biggest experts on Kiowa language, you know, and helps us out. And lots of ethnographers and linguists and anthropologists out there work alongside Kiowa language experts to preserve and continue our language. But with that said, I think sometimes the most important thing, you know, for us to encourage, hey, and I'm not trying to push my beliefs or agenda here, and I know there's like critiques of it, but you know, like literature. I think her name is, gosh, I can't remember her name, but she wrote a book. She's Maori. She wrote a book about indigenous methodologies, you know, and then you have books like White Fragility, and I think these teachers really need training in that to understand, like, you even other Native people who make academic careers off of, I think Eve Tuck is another scholar who talks about this, like going to Native communities, you do your research, you get funded by this university. Sometimes these fellowships even have an agenda or a slant on them. You kind of have to write within the parameters of whatever you're being told to do, you know, and you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, it's how I'm acting, what I'm doing, where I'm living, and what I'm in here for. Can I still face this community tomorrow? And if these non-native teachers, you know, can't answer all those questions in a way that's respectful to the native community, then maybe they should, you know, reconsider or go through some sensitivity training or cultural, I don't know, I'm not using all the right words here, but I'm just saying I empathize with what it is that you're saying, and I know that it isn't at every locale, but that is a thing that happens where it could be a teacher, it could be an academic, it could be just someone on a gap year, and they go and you know, I don't mean to offend anyone, but you know, I do think that there is sometimes a white savior mentality in some people, you know, and they go and they mean well, you think, and then they just kind of leave you hanging. And you know, I think we have Riverside Indian School over in Anadarko, And I've heard teachers there complain about, like, people who apply, they're like, well, how far is the nearest Walmart, and how far is the nearest airport, and how far, before
Yeah.
they sign a contract. We need to humanize our students. They're not teachers build relationships with their kids, and their mentors to their kids, and different cultures, like, teachers play a really significant role. And so I think that maybe that really needs to be emphasized whenever we bring on someone who's not one of our tribal members. I'm so sorry, I'm going to shut up now.
I
Fabulous.
apologize. No, this is great. And Linda can give me the details of this if I'm off, but I know one of our professional development programs and their native certification, they have the college credits, of course, but then they send, Linda, correct me, they send one of a cohort, but the tribe, they have to do like a year-long internship type thing before the tribe will sign off on that certification, which I think is very interesting too. Linda, is that correct? Is that how you would?
Yes, that is correct. Because it's a public university and nobody there really knows the language either. So the tribes want to be sure that before these individuals are certified as language instructors, they do in fact have a good proficiency in cultural understanding.
Yeah, I thought that was really neat. So thank you so much for your input, everybody. This is so interesting to me.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. Leslie, I see your hand. I'm going to get to you in 1 second. I feel like we started to get into some of this. And so, like, supporting Native students to achieve academic readiness holistically. I know we brought up like relationships and cultural identity, and language feeds into this as well. So I just wanted to move us to this slide so people can start thinking about if they have some contributions to this aspect of the conversation as well. But I am going to, Leslie, I'll let you go ahead with what you were about to say.
Hey, Miigwech. No, I just realized as I was rambling, apparently I had to get some things off my chest. So thank you for the space to do that today. Hey, it did kind of go somewhere, didn't it? But it was a question about, like support for teacher training, and I guess it was looked at as like centering non-native teachers. So I would, turning it around, what does it look like to center our local community native teachers as the people who are getting the professional development and developing the skills and joining the economic workforce, joining the community and ceremonial spaces that language access provides, right? And creating this equitable access to thrivance and abundance, right? Through, hey, how are we preparing teachers? Understanding that it's not always as simple as like, I'm going to enroll at a local university and go through a 4-year bachelor's degree program and get a teaching license, and then maybe I'll do a post-bac certificate program. That'd be kind of cool. Or maybe I'll do a master's program to get a little more into my topic. But like, there's so many layers. And so when I saw your next slide here, where it's like, how do Native students achieve academic readiness? This is the same thing for teacher training programs. How do we support any teachers? And Native American languages are such they're less frequently taught languages. There are far fewer resources. It's a little harder to get at some of these for many of our languages. So knowing that there's the affective, there's the emotional, there's the local, there's the economic cost. Do people have the money to put 3,000 hours to 5,000 hours into instruction? Do they have the money and the support to have a year of practicum placement in cultural spaces in the community? How do we match up that kind of policy? Like these grants can possibly give us some support for that. And then if we look at it again systemically, that becomes embedded in and expectations in a community that people are, you know, fully realizing themselves, right, as teachers. It's there's language proficiency training, of course, and then a community must decide on whether it's speaking, understanding, writing, reading, you know, what levels those are at. Maybe a language is not written and that's not their language's protocol. Okay, then, you know, but it's, you know, determining what are those. You got to do language proficiency, but then yeah, you do want content area mastery. You want people to kind of focus on what ages they like to teach. I like to tell people we do all the things, we made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. And in some of these places, like we have such a small pool of new, highly proficient speakers of our language that they might get thrown into the wrong crew. Somebody who loves working with adults and doesn't like kids gets hired to teach at the preschool. We all have heard that story from someone we know, right? Everybody on this call is involved in language programs. Or somebody who just absolutely loves, you know, working with high school kids and really connects and is like, I really want to teach over there in the high school. And they're like, well, you're going to go into, you know, you're teaching Phi-Ed over here and you can teach the second graders or something, you know? So like, just because you know the language. So like even helping guide people into that. What is it that you want to be doing with the language? I think a lot of times we're in such a critical space, you know, it's such an urgent, it's an emergency to create new speakers that we just toss them in wherever. So how is it that we build language programs, you know, realistically and do the best we can with a good base and put people in the good spaces? How do we identify those people in the community? So your slide here, you know, trainers, we need community support system for these young adults, for these adults, for these middle-aged people who are coming back to learning our languages. Culturally relevant pedagogy. We need that to be as kind and loving and strict and strong as our people are in our people's way to support those people. We need to look at what does language revitalization mean in a community? How do we assess, you know, what we've got available and where are the access points in our community? Where can we provide them? Where are we going to focus our efforts? So that's for just like Native teachers, and then Native students achieving academic readiness. Again, I've been asked that question 1,000 times in my life, and we say, okay, the definition of that is going to be what? I have experience in a Native American language medium program, in a language immersion program. Academic readiness, I can tell you what that looks like in my Leech Lake Ojibwe community in Ojibwe. I can tell you what the state of Minnesota describes as English language medium academic readiness. And through networking with other communities in Minnesota, I can start to tell you a little bit about the immigrant communities, the Hmong, the Somali, you know, there are different immigrant communities that are starting to look at these ideas about what does academic readiness mean? What do English learners look like? What does heritage language learning look like? Those all have different contexts and different issues, and they all have somewhat differing solutions. There are areas where they may come together a little bit, that they may overlap, but there are great divergences in those populations as well. And so again, looking at like self-determination in education, what does this mean to us as our locally relevant, you know, people? So I can say our Leech Lake Ojibwe people, but when we work with others, We say, what does this mean to your tribe? And we say, be specific about your local space, your local decision makers. How do Native students, so achieving academic readiness. Yeah, there's a lot of culturally relevant ideology that's being remembered, that's being reclaimed. What does it really mean to be a whole, thriving, abundant Ojibwe person, to be ready to achieve academic readiness, or to be ready to do academic achievement? Those are decisions that are being made in our community. And I think there's been a disconnect for several years between systems and institutions external to our language speaking communities, because I think the systems had this perception that we had intact communities. I think for a long time we were so invisible and so erased. They thought we had completely intact language speaking communities, cultural bases of activities completely thriving, abundant, and intact, just in a silo over here where the heathen Indians stay, you know, after 3:30, after they get out of school, and on the weekends, right? And during summer school. But that's not really what's true. What really has been happening is our communities have been super fractured and have to go and reassert, reclaim often those ideas around what does culturally relevant pedagogy truly look like, and how is that enacted in a community? So they first have to reclaim it to set their standards, and then figure out how to embody that in practice. Again, oh my gosh, I'm going off. See, you guys should send us these questions beforehand so I don't go off on this stuff on you.
I think you said something a minute ago that I was sorry, I was also like kind of working on something at the same time, but I caught something you were saying. Two things. I thought she should make a podcast, I would listen. And the second thing is that when you said oh gosh, it was about trying to bring, we have to reclaim. So I'm with you on that. I agree. And when we try to do these culturally relevant things, or culturally relevant pedagogy, we're trying to bring back practices and ways and like songs and so much more aspects of our culture that were nearly eradicated. And sometimes we can be our own biggest critics of what that looks like and how to go about it. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to just remember like what our mission is and what we're doing, and that we're trying the best that we can to be culturally relevant, to be in a society that dang near tried to wipe out our cultures, or in a nation state that did.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for all your great thoughts. And Leslie, good point. Yeah, I think if we can see all the questions before, if we can make that happen, we'll try to do that. I did see, Adrian, I saw you put something in the chat around like Northwest NALRC and meeting with local tribal language educators and like tribal leaders. I would love if you could come off mute and like say a little bit more to that, if you're able to.
We are, the Northwest Resource Center kind of reached out to us in the sense of, talking about, I think that they were asked, I want to say even like by Deb Holland's office, to kind of put together some information about like what it takes to, to become a language teacher, especially like a certified one. So we're kind of discussing that, and, there's different paths to certification, very state-wise, everything, so that, it's there's no one size fits all way or anything. But yeah, and then just kind of meeting with another local tribe who has like a teacher language institute. And they were trying, they just mentioned kind of like, oh, it's kind of like, yeah, our tribal leaders need to be informed of this too. in terms of what it takes to learn a language. Like, how long does it take to become quote unquote proficient? I don't really like to use the word fluent, but proficient enough to teach a language, like, you know, the time it takes, which it's years, hours, intensive learning, and all the aspect, you know, everything that needs to be involved with kind of becoming a language teacher, and, you know, all the things that go with it, curriculum development, materials development, everything. So it's, as we all here, I'm sure know, it's a process. It's a long process. So, but yeah, in the sense that just kind of hoping to try to put something together. I mean, I don't know how big it's going to be, in the sense of, you know, my thought was just like, okay, we'll obviously start with the state of Arizona because that's where I'm at. And at the University of Arizona, we have like other resources like the Native Nation Institute and Native American Initiative, you know, kind of just institutional resources, other offices that can help us reach out to the local, you know, the local tribes. Yeah, and this was just like within the last couple weeks. So hoping, you know, I mentioned it to my program director and our PI, Sheila Nicholas and Ophelia Zepeda, and she was like, well, like, if you're gonna start on that, let's kind of, you know, soon, and then it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna take some time. So I will keep everyone informed.
Yeah,
That's
that's
great.
awesome. And I saw Leslie, you know, mention something about collabing on that. So definitely get her email if you don't have it already. And then, you know, those of you that are NAL as well, Leslie threw her email in the chat. And feel free to, you know, reach out to each other and share contact information with one another as you're comfortable. Go for
Yeah,
it.
I should have, you know, one thing I should have said at the very, very beginning, we have a brand new cohort of our Native American language with us. Many of them are here with us today. They were just awarded last fiscal year. And so we welcome them. And this is the first that for them, this is the first time we've collaborated with our Native American Language Resource Center grant. And so I think it's a great idea to share those emails and just put, you know, with a list and where and who the project director is, and of course, what place, what grant are they from, and location and entity. So I think that would be great. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, of course.
Hey friends, this is Leslie once again being Induzamide, as we would say here in Ojibwe country. I'm being a big mouth, talking a lot too much. Hey. But no, really, I really appreciate you bringing NAL Ed and the NALRCs together, and like, you had great questions here and great framing, and every one of these is worthy of, you know, a year of study and community of practice and discourse and, you know, like dissertative level, you know, consideration. So we could all go on and on and on, but also as the I'm the program director at the National Native American Language Resource Center, and I'm here in Minnesota in Ojibwe country. Our partners, like I said at the beginning, our partners, like the University of Hawaii, is doing the, you know, acceptance of the award and the fiscal, but we said as the national center, we really want to, we really have to like create this national team. So we're partnered with folks in Alaska, we're partnered with folks over here on the mainland, and, you know, just trying to catch this big range of folks. And we have a really cool team. Our first year of our project was really focused on like standing up the bones of our project, creating the systems to even get a center going, right? And so now we are looking at how are we gonna put this into place? How does a language resource center serve the folks out there, right? So I gotta ask you folks who are on here, what would you be looking for? from a native language medium focused language resource center. You know, what can we build into our what can we build into support, or what can we share with you? Can I share my screen for a moment just to give you folks an idea around the
Sure thing.
pillars? Okay, let me see. This one looks good. So for our folks at the National Center, we have 5 pillars that we're focusing on. We said these are not, you know, the be all to end all of language reclamation and language revitalization, but these are some big, you know, big stocky pillars upon which we can set our table and we can put out all of our wonderful dishes to nourish ourselves. Policy and advocacy is very important, so that is an area of focus for us. Support for teacher training programs is another huge area with a lot of, you know, wild and woolly areas. Resource development, oh my gosh, that's wild. Research and dissemination and leadership development. This just breaks it down a little bit on this next one. What does this, you know, what does this mean? I've got to embiggen it. In our policy, we want to advance the Native American Languages Act. We want to demystify native language medium. We want to deconstruct what happens in all of these different models and kind of talk about that and help inform people. Like when they say, what are the things we can do? What are the resources we can do? What are the steps we can take to get down the road to that? So we are collecting folks, we are collecting resources, and we're going to be producing, you know, webinars, podcasts, interviews, you know, things like that as we are able to thematically, you know, weed through this. Support for teacher training programs is, again, more of these ideas around what are different exemplary programs doing. We're going to examine that. We're going to deconstruct a lot of the pieces, a lot of the really critical pieces that they do, and represent those. We also advise on site visits to some of the exemplary native language medium models in our partnership in Wisconsin, in Hawaii, in Alaska, and then we also have a grassroots coalition network of other native language medium sites that we would recommend folks to go and visit at. We talk about what is the professional development at all of the sites and distill that schema. And again, these are going to be the elements of successful exemplary Native American language programs and schools, so that we can start to present that as a more, you know, concrete piece. What does realistic planning and implementation look like? Resource development. We're going to share out a resource, you know, a website, just as all of the other language resource centers. We've been working together with all of the regional centers, have been coming together. Some are way farther up the road than we are at the National Center because they've got a little more experience. As the National Center, we're going to do annual conferences. We're going to do a handbook, research and dissemination. Again, you know, we just want to make sure that the website and the resource hubs that are developed are user friendly, are usable for our community people, where we are centering our language practitioners in a way that empowers them to share this with all external areas. And when folks external to our communities are looking for information and support, it's also understandable, but it's protective and it's assertive on the part of our Indigenous people. And then we have leadership development, where we're talking about the next generation of language revitalizers. So we're like, we're getting old. We can't be the only ones hanging around, like, and there's like new contexts. I'm always harping on the context of a language setting, right? what are we doing to respond to emergent contexts of communities and language learning? This is what does the next generation need to know about all of this, about policy and advocacy, about research and dissemination, about resources, about teacher training. This is going to very, strictly target a new cohort of 20 persons, younger persons annually. There will be online and summer on-site intensives. Sorry to take up so much room, but we have all these really cool dreams and we want you to come along. Hey, we want to invite you folks. So I'm like, please give us your emails. Please give us your, contact. And as we are putting the meat on the bones and getting these things together, we will definitely be reaching out to you folks and saying, come and listen, or maybe come tell your story. Can we reach out to you and, do these kinds of things?
I think it's
Absolutely.
great. Love it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll work on getting contact information together and shared for you folks, so you can all work with one another and support one another's programming. Before we move into closing, which we'll do in a moment after this slide, I did want to leave a little bit of space for you all to give us some ideas for future discussion topics. It could be something that we started to talk about today that you want to go deeper into. These are also some ideas that we were thinking about potentially. So strategies for identifying needs in your communities, choosing activities that work for your staff and students, implementation strategies, collecting data. These don't have to be the topics. These are just some ideas, but if you have ideas or things that we touched on today that you'd like to go deeper into, if you could share what you would love to talk about in the chat, and we'll collect those after today's meeting. If you're like, but I don't have enough time to think, I need to take a moment and then get back to you on that. I'm going to throw our email in the chat. Feel free to email us as well at any point. If you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're like, oh, I have it, the perfect discussion topic, feel free to email us as well. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Chelsea. When you say resource development, specific types of resources or generally speaking? Classroom resources, more like school or system level resources?
I didn't realize I was on mute. Generally speaking, yeah, so classroom and system level.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, thanks, y'all. Yeah, continue to throw those ideas in the chat, or take our email, so you can email us those ideas as well, so we can make these talking circle discussions as relevant to your current needs and future needs as possible. Any questions at this time? Anything you need to ask us or your program officer? Well, we've got them. Ooh, visualizing qualitative data. That's my jam.
That's a good one. These are all good.
Yeah, fabulous. While you guys are putting down all these great ideas and thinking about a question, I'm going to launch the end of event poll. If you wouldn't mind just maybe completing that really fast, it gives us some really good insight into how we can make these talking circles more relevant and impactful for you. But again, thank you for sharing. Great conversation.
Yes. And in that additional feedback, if there's anything specific you want to talk about that you haven't mentioned yet, feel free to put that in there as well. Or if there's anything that you really liked today, to let us know so that we don't get rid of it.
Yeah.
So if there's anything about the format or a topic or anything that you really like, share those types of things as well, so we can make sure we're keeping the good stuff and changing the other things.
Well, Lonnie, I can't get the quiz to work, but someone got it to work because it has marked.
Yeah.
It's just
Shucks.
me, my screen. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thanks for letting us know, Nadine.
Yeah, thank you. If we co-hosted you, you might not be able
Yeah,
to.
maybe. Let me take your
Okay.
co-host off. Maybe
Yeah,
that'll.
take that off.
There
Just kidding.
you go. I gotcha. Okay, I just withdrew your co-hosting.
That'll work now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, I don't think there are any questions, but if you think of one before we exit today, you can throw that in the chat or come off mute and interrupt me. Oh. Okay, just a reminder that we have our annual project directors meeting. It is in person this year, so that will be in Washington, D.C., April 14th and 15th. So make sure you're planning for that. If you need to rearrange your budget, make sure you're doing that and communicating with your program officer as needed to make sure that you're all set for those dates in April. We will get you a more official, cute save the date and more information about this as we're able to get the details out. So more to come on that, but wanted you to have the dates and be aware that it is in person and you will need to plan for that. And then some technical assistance opportunities that are coming up, office hours at 1 p.m. Eastern, December 5th, which happened earlier today. So thank you for those of you that joined us for that. And then the next ones will be January 23rd, March 27th, June 26th, and August 28th. And then, of course, you can always sign up for a coaching call as well by using our Calendly link. Keep in mind that those coaching appointments go to your TA team. So if you need to meet with your program officer, please make sure that you are emailing them and keeping them in the loop as well. And that's all I have. Anything else, Donna or Olani, for the good of the group?
I'm good. How about you, Donna?
Oh, I'm great. I really appreciate everyone's time and effort and all the great work that's going out there. We've got a great group here, and I'm excited to see what comes of it. And as I'm sitting here listening to Leslie going, oh, all these article ideas and research ideas are coming through my head. And that would be so cool to see. So any way we can support that too, let us know. But thank you, everybody. And we do wish everybody a great holiday season, to stay safe and warm. And thanks again for joining us.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Have
a great rest of your day. If you need your program officer's email address, those are on the screen. Our email address is on the screen as well. But if you have no questions, you've done your poll, you don't need anybody's email, then you are welcome to go on about your day. Thank you all. Wado.
Have a wonderful day.
Yeah,